Do you ever wake up one morning, open your phone, and see something that makes you stop mid-scroll? That was me last night. I was sipping coffee, half awake, when I stumbled upon a headline buried deep in an international outlet. Filipinos quietly broke another world record. No fanfare, no confetti, just silence. I thought, wait, what, again? So I dug deeper, and the more I uncovered, the angrier and prouder I became. Because this record isn't just about numbers, it's about who we are when no one's watching. And by the end of this, you'll see why the world tried to hide it. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type interested in the comments, and I will give you a heart. You know that moment when you feel something big has happened but nobody's talking about it? That's exactly how this started. I saw that quiet headline about Filipinos breaking a world record, but here's the weird part. Not one major Western outlet covered it properly. No CNN, no BBC, not even a footnote on the evening news. Yet it was everywhere in smaller Asian and Middle Eastern newsrooms, so I thought, what are they not saying? Turns out this record wasn't about sports or entertainment. It wasn't about boxing, beauty queens, or singing contests, though we've dominated those too. No, this one hit deeper. The Philippines just broke the world record for the largest active workforce of overseas professionals contributing to global essential industries, medicine, maritime, engineering, and caregiving combined. Over 12.5 million Filipinos working abroad, supporting nearly 300 million people worldwide through their labor, care, and expertise. Let that sink in. 12.5 million lives quietly powering the planet. And yet not one parade, not one public recognition, just Filipinos doing what we've always done, showing up, saving lives, fixing systems, and smiling through exhaustion. But here's the kicker. When you trace where these Filipinos are, from hospitals in London to construction sites in Qatar, from ships crossing the Pacific to classrooms in Japan, you start to realize this isn't a coincidence. It's a pattern, a global dependence nobody wants to admit. Because if they did, they'd have to face a brutal truth. The modern world doesn't run without Filipinos. You want to know what makes me furious? This record wasn't celebrated because it exposes a dependency. It proves how fragile some countries actually are without us, how their healthcare would crumble, how their elderly would go uncared for, how their ships would stall, their schools would suffer, their hospitality would collapse. You think I'm exaggerating? Let me show you what I found. The UK's NHS, that's their National Health Service, currently has over 24,000 Filipino nurses. That's 1 in every 11 foreign nurses. During the pandemic, when British hospitals were overwhelmed, it was Filipino nurses who filled the gap. They worked 16-hour shifts, slept in corridors, and still managed to sing to patients who were dying alone. The BBC called them heroes, but after the cameras turned off, many of them went home to cramped dorms and zero pay raises. Now, go to Saudi Arabia, the largest employer of Filipino overseas workers in the world. Over 1 million Filipinos there. And here's the shocking part. 70% of their healthcare workers in private hospitals are Filipino. 70%. If that labor force suddenly disappeared, their health system would implode within days. But nobody talks about that because it's inconvenient. It reveals how much the world relies on a country they still label developing. And let's talk about Japan, the country that prides itself on efficiency, technology, and discipline. Yet their aging population has become their greatest crisis. So what did Japan do? They opened visa programs specifically for Filipino caregivers and nurses, tens of thousands of them, because they trust Filipino compassion. Japanese families are now cared for by Filipinos who speak their language, respect their traditions, and treat their elders like their own. And the Japanese government knows this. They've quietly called Filipinos their cultural bridge of humanity. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. We as a nation have become the emotional infrastructure of the world. Wherever humanity is struggling, whether it's a patient needing care, a ship needing a captain, or a classroom needing warmth, there's a Filipino there patching the cracks no one else will. But here's where it gets darker. This record, this milestone wasn't celebrated because it reveals something uncomfortable. The more Filipinos the world depends on, the more the Philippines itself bleeds out talent. Our best minds, hands, and hearts exported. Every time someone leaves, the country loses a builder, a teacher, a healer. It's a bittersweet success. We're winning globally, but losing locally. And maybe that's why they didn't want to talk about it. Because if people knew how much Filipinos contribute to the world, they'd have to ask, why can't the Philippines thrive the same way its people do abroad? Now this is where the rabbit hole deepens. See, this isn't the first time something like this happened. Back in the early 2000s, Filipino seafarers already dominated 25% of the global maritime workforce. 2 decades later, it's still true. We literally moved the world's economy, transporting 80% of the world's goods across oceans, and yet you've never seen a headline saying, "Filipinos keep the global supply chain alive." Instead, what do we get? Filipino worker found dead in employer's house. OFW missing, domestic helper mistreated. Always tragedy, never triumph. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The global economy thrives on our silence. As long as Filipinos work quietly, smile politely, and never demand credit, the system stays stable. The moment we start realizing our collective power, the world has to renegotiate its hierarchy. That's why I'm telling you this now, because the record wasn't hidden by accident. It was hidden to protect an illusion. The illusion that the West built the modern world, when in reality, it's held together by Filipino hands. You see, this story isn't about a number, it's about visibility. It's about finally putting a spotlight on the invisible empire of Filipino labor that makes other nations functional. And I know what some people will say, but that's what we do best. We serve. No, that's what we've been made to believe we're best at. What we actually do best is lead. But the world has gotten too comfortable keeping Filipinos in supporting roles because we play them so damn well. So now I'll ask you, if Filipinos can hold up entire countries abroad, what's stopping us from rebuilding our own? If you're still watching this right now and you feel that mix of pride and frustration burning in your chest, I want you to type visible in the comments, because it's time we stop being the world's best kept secret. The next part, we're going deeper, because what I'm about to tell you next will make you question everything you thought you knew about power, influence, and the quiet empire Filipinos built without a single bullet or banner. Let's be honest, the Philippines doesn't have an empire made of gold, oil, or nuclear power. Ours is built with sweat, resilience, and the kind of grit that makes other nations pause and ask, how are they still standing? But here's the twist. We didn't build our empire inside our borders, we built it in every corner of the planet. In the hospitals of London, in the skyscrapers of Dubai, in the classrooms of Singapore, on the ships cutting through the Pacific at midnight. It's invisible to the untrained eye, but make no mistake, it's there. See, other countries measure power by what they own. We measure it by who we touch. Every Filipino working abroad is a walking ambassador, not of luxury, but of humanity. You can't teach that. You can't automate it. And that's why we keep winning even when we're not supposed to. But here's where it gets infuriating. While the world benefits from our people, the Philippines is bleeding from it. According to the World Bank, remittances from overseas Filipinos hit $38 billion, 0 cents in 2024, accounting for nearly 9.4% of the country's GDP. That's the highest ratio in Asia. Think about that. A tenth of our entire economy is powered by the sacrifices of Filipinos outside the Philippines. It's both heroic and heartbreaking. Imagine this, an entire generation of parents working oceans away so their children can study, while those same children grow up longing for the parents they barely see. That's the real cost of this record. Every dollar wired home is soaked in distance. Every success abroad creates a silence at home. And yet, what does the world do? They call us heroes. Modern day heroes. Sounds noble, right? But here's the trick. That title is a cover-up. It's a way to glorify sacrifice while excusing the system that made it necessary. Hero sounds good on a headline. It doesn't sound good when you realize it means you're expected to save everyone alone. I once heard a story from a Filipino nurse in Canada. Let's call her Leah. She said, "I came here to help people live longer, but sometimes I feel like my own life is on pause." She works 2 shifts, barely sleeps, sends money home every week. Her son's in university now, but she hasn't hugged him in 6 years. 6 years? The price of her success? Her presence. That's the irony of the Filipino spirit. We keep giving even when it hurts. We smile through exhaustion. We joke about the pain. But somewhere deep down, we know something isn't right. Because if our people are good enough to build other countries, why can't they thrive in their own? And let's go deeper. Did you know that Filipino seafarers operate over 25% of the world's commercial vessels? That means 1 out of every 4 ships on the ocean right now is being navigated, repaired, or managed by a Filipino. And yet, ask the average person which country dominates global shipping, and they'll say Greece or China or the US, but the truth is, Filipinos keep their ships alive. And it's not just the sea. In the Middle East, Filipino engineers designed and built some of the tallest buildings in the world, from the Burj Khalifa to the Riyadh Metro. We're not just the workforce, we're the architects of modern civilization. You see, we didn't conquer lands. We conquered hearts, systems, and industries, not through war, but through work. Not through power, but through patience. But here's what keeps me up at night. This empire we built, the one that keeps the world turning, doesn't have a capital. No one waves our flag when they benefit from our blood, sweat, and skills. It's global power without global credit. That's why this record, this Filipinos broke another record headline, never made it mainstream. Because the moment the world admits how much it relies on us, they'll have to start giving us a seat at the table. And trust me, that scares them. Because what happens when Filipinos stop apologizing for their greatness? What happens when we stop believing our only role is to serve? The balance shifts, the power flips, and suddenly the nations that once employed us now have to partner with us. That's not fantasy. It's already happening. Look at Japan's new economic program. They're not just hiring Filipino workers anymore. They are investing in Filipino leaders. They're opening universities, research partnerships, and tech hubs in collaboration with Filipino institutions. Why? Because they've realized that Filipino adaptability is the missing link in their aging, rigid system. Even Canada has quietly adjusted immigration policies to prioritize Filipino healthcare professionals, not just for skills, but for attitude. Because while other workers clock out, Filipinos care. That emotional intelligence, that heart, is something AI can't replicate. And let's talk about the US, the so-called land of opportunity. Do you know which group dominates their healthcare front lines? From New York to California, Filipino nurses. More than 1/3 of all foreign nurses in the US are Filipino. They worked through the worst of the pandemic, losing thousands of their own to keep Americans alive. And yet, their stories barely made it to the news. Why? Because the world's comfort depends on our invisibility. Here's the hard truth. We broke the record, but we didn't break the silence. The world still sees us as helpers, not healers. Workers, not innovators. Survivors, not strategists. But that's starting to change. Slowly, quietly. Because every Filipino abroad who excels is planting a seed. One that says, we belong here. Every success story chips away at centuries of bias. Every act of excellence redefines what it means to be Filipino. So if you're watching this, I want you to realize something powerful. This record isn't just about statistics. It's about recognition. It's proof that even when the spotlight avoids us, our impact cannot be erased. We're everywhere, we're unstoppable, and most of all, we're undeniable. But here's where things get even more interesting, because this record, as inspiring as it is, reveals something far more dangerous about the future. Something the world is trying to hide. If you think Filipinos are winning now, wait until you see what happens next, when we finally start owning what we've built. Because the next chapter isn't about contribution, it's about control. Type power in the comments if you're ready to see what happens when Filipinos stop asking for permission and start claiming what's theirs. Let's stop pretending. The world knows exactly what Filipinos are capable of, they just don't want to admit it, because the second they do, they'll have to face a terrifying question. What happens when Filipinos stop being employees and start being equals? What happens when we stop holding the ladder and start climbing it ourselves? That, my friends, is what keeps world leaders awake at night. See, this isn't just about one record being broken. It's about a shift in global consciousness. We're witnessing something the world never prepared for, the Filipino awakening. For decades, we've been the backbone of the global workforce, but now we're becoming something far more powerful, the backbone of the global economy itself. Don't believe me? Let's talk numbers, not emotions, not feelings, just raw data. The Philippine Overseas Employment Administration reported that by mid-2025, remittances from Filipinos abroad crossed $40 billion, $100 million, 0 cents, a historic high. That's not charity money. That's economic muscle. That's influence. That's leverage. To put that into perspective, if OFW remittances were a country, it would rank among the top 40 economies in the world. You heard that right. The money Filipinos send back home each year outpaces the GDP of entire nations. That's not just survival, that's empire building. Quiet, humble, invisible empire building. And yet, we're still treated as if we're the world's hired help, as if our only purpose is to keep the lights on for others while our own homes flicker in the dark. But here's where the world made a mistake. They underestimated the very people holding it together. They thought Filipinos would never realize their worth. They thought gratitude would keep us docile. They thought the thank yous and awards would keep us loyal. But now, Filipinos are starting to connect the dots. You can see it everywhere, from London to Dubai, from Toronto to Tokyo. Filipinos are no longer just working. They're leading, managing, innovating, starting businesses, owning properties, running hospitals, teaching universities, leading NGOs, even shaping international policy. And here's the wild part. They're still sending money home, still helping relatives, still smiling, still showing up. That's power, not the loud, aggressive kind, the subtle, unstoppable kind that seeps into every corner of the world until it can't be ignored anymore. Now, I want you to imagine something. Imagine if every Filipino abroad, all 12 million of them, decided to take 1 week off at the same time. Just 7 days. No nurses, no caregivers, no engineers, no seafarers, no domestic helpers, just rest. You know what would happen? Planes would ground, hospitals would collapse, elderly care centers would shut down, cargo ships would drift unmanned, offices, restaurants, and schools across continents would stall. The global economy would freeze. That's how powerful Filipinos are. The system depends on us more than it will ever admit. But we never asked for power because we were taught not to. We were taught to be grateful for opportunity, not to question inequality. We were raised to think humility means silence. But there's a difference between being humble and being invisible. And that's the realization happening right now worldwide. I've spoken to countless Filipinos who say the same thing. We're done being quiet. They're tired of working miracles for other nations while their own country struggles with corruption, poor infrastructure, and lack of opportunity. They're tired of being seen as just workers. You want to know what's stopping Filipinos from fully taking over the world? It's not talent, it's not intelligence, it's belief. We've spent so long proving ourselves to others that we forgot to claim what's already ours. But that's changing fast. Look at the global hiring data. From 2022 to 2025, the demand for Filipino professionals increased by 28%, outpacing every other nationality. Why? Because employers have realized what we've known all along. Filipinos are irreplaceable. We bring technical skill and emotional intelligence. We bring discipline and joy. We fix systems and heal hearts. That's not a workforce, that's a movement. And here's the beauty. We're exporting excellence, but importing awakening. Every OFW who comes home brings with them not just money, but new ideas, new standards, new ways of thinking. Every balikbayan is a bridge connecting global success with local potential. You can't stop that energy. You can't suppress that kind of cultural momentum. But let's not sugarcoat it. This awakening also comes with pain. It's the pain of realization. The realization that while Filipinos lift the world, their homeland still suffers from neglect. That the same people who make foreign hospitals run have to line up in overcrowded ERs when they come home. That the same engineers who build cities abroad drive through floods and potholes when they return. That hurts. And yet, maybe that pain is what will spark the next revolution. Not of weapons, but of willpower. Because here's the truth, the world doesn't fear our labor, it fears our unity. The moment Filipinos start believing we're not just employees, but empire builders, the game changes. So the question now isn't can Filipinos change the world, it's how much longer before the world admits we already have. Let me be brutally honest. I'm tired of hearing Filipinos are the best workers. No, Filipinos are the best builders. Workers serve a system. Builders create one. And that's what we've been doing all along. Constructing nations, healing societies, raising children who aren't even ours, and keeping industries alive with grace, humor, and soul. If that's not leadership, what is? So here's my challenge to every Filipino watching right now. Stop waiting for the world to recognize you. Start recognizing yourself. You don't need a certificate from the West to validate your worth. You don't need applause to prove your power. You just need to look around because every corner of the world already bears your fingerprint. And to those watching from other countries, here's something you might not want to hear. Your systems, your comfort, your industries, they run on Filipino humanity. You've built your success on our shoulders. And it's time you said that out loud. Because we're not just part of your workforce, we're a part of your foundation. And foundations don't crumble, they endure. If you believe it's time the world gives credit where it's due, type respect in the comments, not just for the Filipinos abroad, but for every Filipino who keeps standing tall, smiling wide, and proving again and again that no matter how much the world tries to overlook us, we will always rise louder, prouder, and stronger than before. Because this isn't the story of a small island nation anymore, it's the story of a people who became the heartbeat of humanity. And now that the world's listening, it's about time we start speaking.